Many thanks for joining us at this hour on QTV. You are watching QTV News, and I am Ajibintu Drame in tonight's top stories. President Barrow has left on an official visit to Nigeria. The Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee forecasts the possibility of a quick post-COVID-19 recovery next year. A two-day training course on strengthening inter-party committee dialogue and mediation is underway. In sports news, there is joy for fans of African basketball as top-class competition returns across the continent. In business news, there is an important announcement from the National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation about groundnut prices. The Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce has established strong e-commerce partnership to expand the reach of women entrepreneurs. In international news, today is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. We hear what this means locally and globally. Former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing has died after contracting COVID-19. Well, that's it from tonight's bulletin. Do stay tuned for the news in detail. Now on to local news. President Barrow on Thursday morning left the country on an official visit to Nigeria. The purpose of the visit is not made public by State House. Aliu Sise reports.
The president was seen off at the Banjul International Airport by the Interior Minister and security chiefs. In a brief public announcement, the presidency only announced his visit to Nigeria, but no further details were given regarding the purpose of the visit. This has led to media and social media speculation as to the reason for the trip. What is certain is that for decades, the Gambia and Nigeria have enjoyed long-standing bilateral ties. This is evident by the presence in the Gambia of several Nigerian banks, coupled with the existence of many investors of Nigerian origin in small and medium enterprises and other forms of economic undertakings. Described as Africa's superpower, Nigeria also continues to support the country's judiciary with judges. Currently, Nigeria has a military contingent as part of economic peacekeeping forces deployed to the Gambia since the departure of former President Yahya Jammeh in 2017. The president's visit to Nigeria comes less than 3 days after the visit by the president of ECOWAS Commission, Jean-Claude Cassibro, who gave assurances of ECOWAS continued support to the Gambia. No comment for now, he told me before boarding his hired jet as I attempt to get few words from him. Your Excellency, okay, all right, thank you. On arrival in Abuja, the president was received by the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs before inspecting a guard of honor. From the usual airport ceremony, the presidential convoy drove to the palace where he was received by his counterpart, President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria. Strengthening the Gambia-Nigerian ties in diverse areas, including peace and security, are expected to be the agenda of the visit. The president returned to Banjul on Friday. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliu Sise.
The Central Bank of the Gambia's Monetary Policy Committee forecasts that although economic activities remain weak as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, there is the possibility of a quick recovery next year. This forecast, according to the committee, is due to a prediction of a rebound in the agriculture and tourism sectors and strong fiscal and monetary policies that are being implemented. Momodulami Choi reports.
This is the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank giving its quarterly briefing on the shape of our economy. The country's economy is highly dependent on the global economic outlook, which had shown signs of weak growth in the third quarter of this year due to economic shocks from the coronavirus pandemic. However, there is now a changing upward trend of growth in the global economy, trickling down to our own.
The bank's quarterly business sentiment survey has shown that the pandemic eroded business confidence. However, with the marked slowdown in COVID-19 cases and the news of a vaccine discovery, the sentiments of businesses have improved.
Government's total revenue and grants have increased in the first 9 months of this year, including non-tax revenue compared to the same period last year. The government's expenditure and net lending has also registered a 12.7% increase. The last 9 months have also shown an increase in government's recurring expenditures, that is the amount of money it spends on salaries, allowances, wages and others, while expenditure on infrastructure development has declined.
Total revenue and grants stood at $14.2 billion, 14.4% of GDP in the first 9 months of 2020 compared to $12.3 billion, 14.0% of GDP in the same period last year. Tax revenue rose by 1.6% to $7.7 billion, or 7.9% of GDP in the first 9 months of 2020, from $7.6 billion, or 8.7% of GDP in the corresponding period of last year.
The banking sector is also described as fundamentally sound, with a high level of capital and a liquidity ratio of 95.5%, which is higher than the statutory requirement of 30%. It means bank customers can easily access money when desired. The stock of the country's treasury bills have also registered an 8.9% increase as opposed to 4.8% at the end of July this year.
Reserve money growth accelerated markedly to 32.3% in September 2020 from a growth of 18.6% recorded in the corresponding year. Growth in reserve money was driven largely by the increase in the net foreign assets of the central bank.
Domestic borrowing had also increased, leading to an increase in the outstanding domestic debt stock from the same period last year, which stood at 33.1% and has now risen to $34.8 billion as at the end of November. Despite weak economic progress this year due to the coronavirus pandemic, experts are anticipating a recovery, with policy measures being implemented towards realizing that goal next year.
Taking the above factors into consideration, the committee has decided the following: maintain the policy rate at 10%, maintain the required reserve of commercial banks at 13%, and maintain the interest rate on the standing deposit facility at 2.5% and the standing lending facility at 11%.
2021 is just around the corner, and our economic outlook greatly depends on the prospect of business returning to normal, but only if vaccines prove to be effective towards returning us back to normalcy from a pandemic that shrunk the global economy. Mohamed Lamin Choi, Qtv News.
The West African Network for Peace Building Network, WANEP, in partnership with the UNDP and the United Nations Peace Building, is hosting a two-day training course with the country's political parties on strengthening inter-party committee dialogue and mediation. Babukasi reports.
The two-day gathering aims to help political parties by giving them a platform for developing local capacity to prevent violent and destructive conflicts and mitigate and strike a compromise between conflicting parties. The organizers believe the approach is an important tool and strategic framework for developing state capacity to prevent conflict, as the model helps countries to protect civilians and effectively respond to challenges of development and internal conflicts. Welcoming the participants, WANEP National Coordinator, Madam Salamanjai, said the media plays a key role in our new political dispensation, but dialogue among political parties is key as the country continues to learn and develop as a new democratic nation.
Even though the current government has embarked on reforms and adopted a national development plan in 2018, the objective to deliver good governance and accountability, social cohesion, and resuscitating the fragile economy is being hindered by the heightening political polarization and inter-party wrangling in the country. The transitional period has not been all smooth. A legacy of institutional dysfunction, overly centralized governance with limited participation and accountability continue to fuel division, fear, and ethnic politicization.
Thomas Kimaru, representing the UNDP country director, said the training could not have come at a better time as the country is preparing for the 2021-2023 election cycle.
The support provided by WANEP in this training is a clear illustration of this alliance and also an entry point for further collaboration between the inter-party committee and civil society organizations at the national and local levels. The role of women in peace building and development cannot be overemphasized. I therefore appeal to the inter-party committee and all political parties to consciously increase the participation of women in decision-making positions and benefit from diverse capacities in dialogue and mediation. We expect the training will provide space for both women and men to understand methods of promoting political dialogue and mediation of disputes as the country heads towards 2021 elections.
Honorable Alifa Sala, co-chairperson of the Inter-Party Committee, told the gathering that peace and dialogue are required in every peaceful society, citing the example of how the country navigated a peaceful transition following the 2016 presidential elections.
The country went through an impasse where almost 200,000 people either became internally displaced persons or refugees. 200,000 people, and the election was won by 200,000 plus. But what followed? Almost 200,000 people became displaced. That is the cost of lack of dialogue, and therefore dialogue is a key tool for survival.
The organizers, UNEP, the Gambia chapter, is a leading and nationally recognized peace-building organization working at community and national level. It is incumbent on civil societies in the Gambia to undertake proactive measures towards building a sustainable peace, which is essential to the foundation of democracy, human rights, justice, and long-term development. Babukar C, QTV News.
We'll go with a short commercial break. The news continues with some more local stories. Do stay tuned. Welcome back from that short commercial break. If you are just tuning in, this is QTV News. Still onto some local stories. The Gambia, as a member of the Codex Alimentarius Commission, in collaboration with the FAO and the WHO, on Thursday inaugurated the National Codex Committee, NCC, which aims to protect consumers' health, safety and ensure fair practice in the food trade. More in this report. The Codex Alimentarius Commission is the joint FAO-WHO standard-setting program established in 1963, which seeks to protect the health and consumption of food and also ensure fair international food trade practices. Dr. Adam Assaud, the board chairman of the National Codex Committee, says the NCC wished for an increase in participation for the development of codex standards and data support, geared towards enhancing consumer tastes and preferences.
As a member country of the Codex Alimentarius, the Gambia supports food elaboration activities with a view to contribute to the development of science-based food standards and responsibly participate in the development of Codex standards. In addition, the country takes into account the national specificities and interest, thereby ensuring that Codex standards remain practical and globally acceptable and implementable.
At the event to mark this milestone, it also recognizes the lifetime achievement of the late Dr. Omar Toure, who played a significant role in the Codex Alimentarius and its establishment. The Vice President of the Gambia, Dr. Aissatou Toure, used the opportunity to praise his diligent efforts, adding that her office will also be open. She also thanked the FAO and WHO for their support.
The Barrow government deems it very fitting to not only recognize individual achievements to national development, but also to award them appropriately. We are forever indebted to the awardee for a legacy of knowledge, commitment, dedication, and professionalism. The Gambia must ensure that Codex standards and guidelines are developed and updated to guide national policies towards national food safety framework, preventing foodborne diseases, epidemics, and malnutrition in line with the National Development Plan.
Chayasin Fall, Executive Director of the National Nutrition Agency, also paid a tribute to the late Dr. Omar Toure, referring to him as the wise old man. He added that such legends should be recognized and awarded before they depart. An award was given to the late man's brother. Malang A. Fofana, NCC chairman, explains what Gambians can expect and the challenges they face.
This committee has been in existence for the past few years, but it has become a little bit unfunctional due to the fact that, just like I said, even though Nana was coordinating, but that coordination has now been shifted to the Food Safety and Quality Authority, which is a new institution established in 2011. Since 2011, the college has not been functioning very well, and the authority has seen it difficult befitting. If you look at our country, our main export usually in this country is groundnut, and when we send our groundnut to, for example, the European countries, usually they don't accept our groundnut because of the fact that it is high in aflatoxin and other contaminants. And the work of the product is to ensure that the food that we produce in the country is safe and of standard, so that the consumer in the country can consume standardized food and of high quality, but at the same time we can be able to trade with other partners globally.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Gambia is classified as a low-income food deficit country. The great hope is that with this committee, there will be improvements in food control system in the Gambia. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News. We will take another short break and we continue with business, international and sports news. Do stay tuned. Welcome back once again. On to business news. The National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation, previously known as GGC, wishes to inform the farming community about an increase in the farm gate price for the 2020-21 trade season. After a series of consultation, the National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation is happy to announce that the government of the Gambia has approved an increase in farm gate price from $20,700 to $23,000 per metric ton. This represents an increase of 28% compared to last year. Farmers are therefore urged to take their groundnuts to the nearest SECCO to receive their payments. The National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation wishes the farming community a very successful marketing season. For National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation. In other business news, the Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce has established a partnership with Qmoney, Thunderfund and Pronto, an e-commerce platform to expand the reach of women entrepreneurs. As Jenna Bosonko reports, a training session for women GWCC members on Qmoney services and Pronto was held this week.
The Gambian Women's Chamber of Commerce brings together and provides a support base for women in business and women entrepreneurs who are committed to working together. The coronavirus pandemic has motivated the Chamber to help women set up and sustain a viable digital business model to keep their businesses going. This is why the Chamber is partnering with Qmoney, Pronto and Thunderfund.
The Women Chamber of Commerce members are going digital. That's our slogan, and that's what we're working towards. So as part of going digital, we're encouraging our members all to have a Q wallet and use it for their basic transactions.
E-commerce eliminates the need for physical stores and allows businesses to expand their customer base. It eliminates long lines of customers. E-commerce sites also offer a huge advantage to both shoppers and stores that aren't located in a major urban area. And even if a business is located in a city like Banjul or Serekunda, e-commerce opens up new markets.
Mrs. Mudge said, you know what, Modu, we have to get our website sorted out, you know. And I know because from prior relationships that I was working with GCCI, like we need to also get our digital processes sorted out because we want to have very key, tangible benefits to being a member at GWCC.
Mobile Money, Qmoney, is an electronic mobile service that enables phone owners to send, receive and store money. The relative safety, ease of mobility and convenience of the service can cut the cost of production expenses of businesses.
Right now we're working with the Gambia Women Chamber of Commerce, who have decided to go digital. And definitely that's one of the first steps really in a lot of opening a lot of opportunities for the Chamber of Commerce, for women in general, and for the country at large. We know that today technology really drives our lives. It has everything, and there's no going back. It's only going forward. There's no industry, no sector that you touch in this world, in the Gambia included, that really is not being driven by technology. Development, social and economic development, empowerment of the people really is hinging on technology.
Thunderfund, one of Africa's leading crowdfunding platform for innovators, creatives and entrepreneurs, is also among the partners enabling GWCC members to go global. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jennifer Sonko.
And now on to international news. Today is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. This year's theme is Building Back Better Towards an Inclusive, Accessible and Sustainable Post-COVID-19 World by and for with persons with disabilities. Loli M. Kamara has more.
As part of its commemoration, UNESCO will also organize a global awareness-raising campaign, Tell Our Stories, Enable Our Rights, on its social media channels, focusing on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Annual observance of the International Day of Disabled Persons was proclaimed in 1992 by United Nations General Assembly resolution to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society and development, and to increase awareness of the situation of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic and cultural life. According to the UN strategy, disability inclusion is an essential condition to upholding human rights, sustainable development, peace and security. It is also central to the promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to leave no one behind. The commitment to realizing the rights of persons with disability is not only a matter of justice, but an investment in a common future. The United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy provides the foundation for sustainable and transformative progress on disability inclusion through all pillars of the work of the United Nations. Through the strategy, the United Nations system reaffirms the full and complete realization of the human rights of all persons with disabilities. Statistics states, even under normal circumstances, persons with disabilities are less likely to access healthcare, education, employment, and to participate in the community. In spite of there being 1 billion people with disabilities, they remain among the most excluded groups in many societies and are among the hardest hit in this crisis in terms of fatalities. Building on many decades of UN's work in the field of disability, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, CRPD, adopted in 2006, has further advanced the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and other international development frameworks, such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Charter on Inclusion of Persons with Disability in Humanitarian Action, the New Urban Agenda, and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Development. This year, the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, IDPD, also falls on the same week as the Conference of States Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, 30th November to 1st and 3rd December 2020, and will be observed throughout the week in conjunction with the 13th session of the Conference of States Parties to the CRDP. In recognition of this commitment, the Secretary General submitted in October 2020 the first comprehensive report on steps taken by the United Nations system to mainstream disability inclusion and implement the strategy since its launch. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also made a statement, I quote, "As the world recovers from the pandemic, we must ensure that the aspirations and rights of persons with disabilities are included and accounted for in an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. This vision will only be achieved through active consultation with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations," he said, and quote ends. The Secretary General, Gambia Federation for the Disabled, Lamin Mane, states that the day is significant and he is honored to be part of the commemorations, but stressed that despite numerous success registered, they are still faced with challenges and that the Gambia Federation for the Disabled have been totally ignored by the government.
But they still lack a lot to do. As a duty bearer and as a technocrat, they should be there to see how best they can put people with disabilities in forefront of their decision-making body. Because we feel that when it comes to decision-making, Gambian disabled fraternity in the Gambia are left behind.
Mane also said since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, his organization only received 50 bags of rice and 50 bags of soup from the government, while laying emphasis on government to come to their aid.
People with disabilities are the most affected one, because they are the most vulnerable. You come to COVID-19, able can manage to go out and make something out of it. But people with disabilities are so completely reluctant that they couldn't go out.
He thanked the CEO of QCell, Mohammed Jah, for his foresight in helping his organization with cars and bags of rice, among others. For Qtv News, Lolly M. Camara.
Former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing has died aged 94 from COVID-19 complications, according to a family statement. During his tenure from 1974 to 1981, he oversaw sweeping social reforms in France and closed the European Union. More in this report.
When Valéry Giscard d'Estaing came into power in 1974, he was at 48 the youngest French president since Louis Napoleon in 1848. In the course of his presidency, he sought to modernize French society by liberalizing the economy and laws on divorce, abortion and contraception, and lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. But Giscard d'Estaing only managed one term, which at that time lasted for 7 years, losing his re-election bid to François Mitterrand. He entered politics and was elected as an MP in the 1950s and held a number of key posts, including becoming finance minister in 1969 during Charles de Gaulle's presidency from 1959 to 1969. After the sudden death of President Georges Pompidou in 1974, Giscard d'Estaing threw his hat into the ring for France's top job. In office, he, together with his German counterpart, the Chancellor Helmut Schmidt, helped drive Europe towards a monetary union, culminating in the launching of the European monetary system, a precursor of today's single currency, the euro. It was also at his initiative that leaders of the world's richest countries first met in 1975, an event that evolved into the annual summits of the Group of Seven, the G7 Club. In 1976, President Jawara made a state visit to France.
Well, we discussed mainly matters of interest to France and the Gambia. We discussed possible areas of cooperation between our two countries. And of course we touched briefly on international matters, particularly African matters.
Does your visit signal a strengthening of the relations between your country and France?
Certainly relations between the Gambia and France have always been good, but I have no doubt that this visit will further strengthen relations and increase the cooperation which exists between our two countries.
After 1981, when he lost the presidency, he remained active in politics, first regaining a seat in the French Parliament and then serving in the European Parliament. In 2001, European leaders selected him to lead work on the bloc's constitutional treaty, which French voters then rejected. In 2004, after losing his legislative seat, Giscard d'Estaing ended his active political career. The current president, Emmanuel Macron, paid tribute to him, saying he was a servant of the state, a politician of progress and freedom. His death has plunged the French nation into mourning, Macron added. His political career, however, wasn't without controversy. In 1979, a satirical French weekly, Le Canard Enchaîné, alleged that in 1973, President Giscard d'Estaing received diamonds worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from Jean Bedel Bokassa, leader of the Central African Republic. Bokassa, whom Giscard d'Estaing once referred to as my dear cousin, was a self-proclaimed emperor who ruled his country from 1966 to 1979 with an iron fist and financial recklessness. He lavished 1/3 of the country's budget on his coronation in 1976. His diamond crown alone cost $20 million. He was overthrown in a French organized operation on 24 September 1979. This diamond scandal, according to analysts, contributed to Giscard d'Estaing's defeat to François Mitterrand in the 1981 presidential election. For QTV News, I am Mudumbuch.
Now let's take a quick look at some interesting sports news. After being starved of on-court action since February, African basketball fans had a lot to feast on at the recently concluded Afrobasket qualifiers in Rwanda and Egypt. More in this report.
Disappointment has turned to joy for fans of African basketball. The much-anticipated Afrobasket competition was due to have tipped off this year, but had to be postponed due to COVID-19. The joy returned with the recently concluded round of qualifiers for Afrobasket 2021. Over 5 days, with events in Rwanda and Egypt. The final phase of qualifying began in February of this year, with Group C in Cameroon, ahead of the global lockdown, which saw the hosts taking on Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Equatorial Guinea. After the coronavirus interruption, Group A, B, and D played their first set of round-robin games in the Rwanda capital, Kigali, while Group E took place in the Egyptian city of Alexandria. Africa's top team all made excellent starts, with Tunisia, Senegal, Nigeria, and Egypt all winning their qualifying groups with 3 wins out of 3. Group A was made up of Tunisia, DRC Congo, the Central African Republic, and Madagascar. In sending out a message that they intend to hang on to their title, defending champions Tunisia began with a convincing 37-point win over Madagascar before going on to beat both DRC Congo and Central African Republic. Senegal began Group B campaigning with an even more convincing win as they crushed Kenya 92-54. But their victories over Mozambique and Angola were much tighter affairs. New coach Boniface Ndong will be satisfied his team have virtually guaranteed a place at Afrobasket 2021. In Group C, Ivory Coast sailed to the top of the rankings, posting 3 wins out of 3 in beating Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Guinea. Group D had an interest on and off the court. Nigeria were coached by Mike Brown, who was in charge of the Cleveland Cavaliers when South Sudan coach Luol Deng was a player. Brown had joined the Nigerian national team after 4 years as an assistant coach of the NBA's Golden State Warriors. Deng and South Sudan were late replacements in the qualifiers after Algeria withdrew, citing poor preparations as a result of COVID-19. Algeria's late withdrawal meant South Sudan Basketball Federation President Deng had to step up in as the coach of the national team. I took this chance and jumped as a coach because we had late notice. I knew I wasn't going to turn it down, as we had had 5 days to prepare, said Deng as he became the first federation president to also be the national team coach. Deng's former coach came out on top as Nigeria D Tigers, who were missing their NBA and Europa League players, still recorded a 100% record in Group D in dispatching South Sudan, Rwanda, and Mali. Egypt, who hosted Group E, were represented by a young squad of players with an average age of 25 years, whose hunger saw them beat Uganda, Cape Verde, and Morocco. All the pools will play a final set of round-robin games in February next year to decide the qualifiers of Afro-Basketball 2021, which will be held in Rwanda. However, even though the top sides in each of the groups have recorded 3 wins from 3, so far none of them have quite guaranteed a place in the finals. The teams who lost all their games need not to despair. They also still have an outstanding chance of clinching a spot at the Continental Showpiece. Adele Campbell reporting for QTV News.
Before we end this bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. President Barrow has left on an official visit to Nigeria. The Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee forecasts the possibility of a quick post-COVID-19 recovery next year. A 2-day training course on strengthening inter-party committee dialogue and mediation is underway. In sports news, there is joy for fans of African basketball as top-class competition returns across the continent. In business news, there is an important announcement from the National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation about groundnut prices. The Gambian Women's Chamber of Commerce has established strong e-commerce partnerships to expand the reach of women entrepreneurs. In international news, today is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. We hear what this means locally and globally. Former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing has died after contracting COVID-19. Well, that's it from me in tonight's bulletin. I am Ajibintu Drame. Join us at 10 for another bulletin. Bye for now.